Welcome to this video on information literacy. Today, we will learn about plagiarism and the importance of citing sources. Information literacy is the foundation of the video, and you can see the definition on the screen, which is the ability to assess information needs and then locate, evaluate, and use the information effectively. We're going to be covering a few things in this video. First, I will demo the library website to show you around. Then we will talk about the academic conversation, why avoiding plagiarism is important, and the type of value information has. And finally, we will go over citing sources. First, I will show you a tour of the library website. When you're on the library website, you will see first at lonestar.edu, at the very top of the screen there is the library's link. Go ahead and click that link. Once you're here, you will be able to see all of the library information. I'm going to show you both the main library website and our specific LSC-Montgomery website. On the LSC Library's website, first you will see the image and then you will see a blue bar. The library catalog here on the left has books, videos, DVDs, and more. You can search the catalog to find stuff that we have in our library here. The research databases are a list of databases you can use to find articles on a topic. You will probably have a librarian come back to your class in the future to teach you how to use these databases for your discipline research. For questions about how to research or how do you do something on the website, you can click these next links. There's information about where you can find the hours and locations of all the campuses and info on library services. Feel free to use this bar when you start your searching. Today I'm going to scroll down a little bit and you can see the same type of information here in the boxes, finding articles, finding ebooks, videos, searching the catalog, and contacting your campus library. If I continue scrolling down, you're eventually going to see research guides on the right. Go ahead and choose the LSC-Montgomery guide. This will take you into our specific homepage. On our homepage, you will see there's a lot of information. I'm not going to go through all of this today, but first, when you're on the homepage, you'll see that we're called the Star Center. So the library is part of the Star Center, and so we also have tutoring and coaching services and library services combined. So if you want to learn more about the tutoring and coaching that we offer, you can go for subject tutoring, so different types of subjects like math, English, that type of work. You can work with tutors on that. If you need help with academic coaching, that's more study skills, time management skills, there are also coaches available for that. You can always book an appointment if you look at the left, schedule an appointment, and then you can go ahead and meet with a tutor or a coach. Feel free to use these services as well. When I go back, we're on the main page again, and I'm going to show you a couple things on our library services. If you scroll down a little bit, you're going to see these boxes in the middle, subject guides and other guides. Our subject guides are built for all the different disciplines at Lone Star. You can choose any of these depending on what you're researching, and there will be tips on the type of databases that you can look at and what kind of keywords you can use to search for books or articles on your topic. I'm going to show you two guides in our other guides, the Career Resource Guide and the Citation Guide. The Career Resource Guide we'll go to first. Choose whichever guide you're interested in and hit go. This guide will help you with your career paper. You can see there's 4 different places you can go. You can look at exploring resources, you can go over to the Track Center to see more information about them, and you can go to Citation Help, which I will also show you. For exploring resources, if you click that link, you're going to come to this new page, and the websites listed here are really highly used for your paper, so go ahead and check them out. The first one is the Occupational Outlook Handbook. This is a great place to start researching. You can search for any kind of job at the top, or you can navigate through different types of occupations on the left. This will give you some insight into the paper that you're writing for your course. If you go back to the main page, again, we already chose the Career Resource Guide. I'm going to go ahead and select the Citation Guide. We'll be talking about citations today, and just remember that if you forget what I'm going over or if you need additional help after the video, you can definitely come check out the citation guide. We have a few citation styles here. These are very commonly used at Montgomery. The one for your class is going to be the MLA guide. So you can either navigate on the left or on the middle buttons. So I'm going to choose MLA style in the middle. And here you're going to be able to see information about how to format your document, your citations here, your works cited page, how to write in-text citations, and then there's other links out. One really good one is Purdue OWL. This is a great site. So go ahead and check this out. We do have a quick guide handout that you'll see on the main page, and this will take you into information about how to do your full paper. So it will have how to set up your document, a checklist, some examples of how to cite different sources like articles, websites, books, etc. So feel free to use this when you're doing your citations. When I go back to the guide, if you look on the left, there's a drop down underneath the MLA Citation Style tab. These are our examples. I will show you an example later on in the video, but for now, you can see that all of these are color coded. So these are components of a citation. Each of them has a color. So that's how you can remember what order the different components go in. And in the middle, you can see we have some examples of just citations that you probably would use, like books, journal articles, periodicals, which could be newspapers or magazines, and websites. So feel free to come back to this guide. And the way to do that, I'll show you one more time. You're going to start at lonestar.edu. Go to the library's link at the top. You can go ahead and scroll down to the bottom until you see the Montgomery Research Guide on the right. And once you're on the resource portal, you can go ahead and select Other Guides and the Citation Guide, and that will take you back to the main page. If you have any questions about navigating the website or finding this information, please don't hesitate to reach out to a librarian. Going back to our presentation, we just looked at the library website. Now we're going to start talking about the academic conversation. And it's important with the academic conversation to understand when you can enter the conversation and when your research starts. And to do this, you'll want to identify the current ideas and perspectives for your subject, whatever you're researching. You can see here, this is the academic conversation. So these are a few of the main steps that you will see. First, it's important to read what is currently being published on a topic. So you're listening, you're gaining context, you're understanding what's been written before. After you have some background information on that, you can start engaging. So you can start posing questions, you might disagree with what someone wrote, maybe you're seeing some concepts that you can combine, and this will allow you to actually get deeper into the material rather than just reading it. Finally, you can contribute, and this is when you put forth your own idea, but you're referring back to those works that you've read in the listening and engaging stages. And you'll see that this is a continuous circle, so academic conversations continue over and over. They don't really stop. People keep adding to past ideas and coming up with new things. So just remember, when you're researching, you're entering into the academic conversation. So one example of a conversation, like a casual conversation, is, for example, reaction videos on YouTube. So first, you're watching the video, so that's your listening stage. When you start engaging with it, you might like it, dislike it, you could share it with your friend, you might want to comment on it, so you're just adding a little bit, but you're not putting forth your own idea. And then finally, contributing. You're creating a reaction video. So you're referring back to the original video, you're reacting to it, and that's your idea of a casual conversation. Now, this can happen in a lot of different settings. It could be with your friends, it could be on Twitter, it could be in different sites as well, but this is just one example of that. With academic conversations, that's what we're going to be focusing on today. It's similar to having conversations with your friends, but in this case, you're going to be discovering a lot of information about a topic. So the background research I mentioned earlier, this allows you to see what scholars or people in the field have written about. Sometimes you might want to write a literature review, or you might find a literature review, and literature reviews are compilations of pretty much all the works on a topic. So they're very good overviews of topics. They'll give you a lot of different sources to look at, and they kind of describe the main themes or conflicts or arguments that are happening within a field. When you're engaging, you're moving on from just reading about the background research and what's out there, and you're starting to conduct your own research. So critical thinking, are you agreeing with it? Are you finding other articles that argue with each other, or maybe everyone agrees on something? You could combine concepts. You're just taking a different look at it and really engaging with that material. And then finally, contributing is that written paper. And in this case, you're referring back to the background research you did, to those articles or sources, and you're adding a little bit of a spin on it. So you're adding to the conversation with your own work, and your contribution is the paper. So a little deeper into listening. With listening, again, this is the first step of the academic conversation. So these are a few questions you could ask yourself when you are looking at listening. What are the major topics or themes in the field? Is there something that everyone's agreed upon? If there is something that scholars say is fine, everyone agrees on it, you probably don't need to research any more into that or add to that because it's already been decided. You're really trying to figure out what are the current questions or ideas being debated. So if we were doing a research paper on the topic of the solar system, some of the main things you could look at could be the planets, the sun, asteroids. You might find a consensus on something, and then you wouldn't need to go deeper into that. And new topics could be something like the hypothetical planet X. So you're just trying to see what you can do to add to that conversation and what's out there already. And moving on to engaging, again, as the second step, a really good question to ask yourself is, are all the sources researched working for your topic? Are they within the right time period? Are they good sources? Are you sure that they're going to work for your topic? Are there any gaps in the research? Is there people saying we should really look at this more when you're reading articles? If so, that's probably something that you can, look at. And then, are there any topics or ideas that could be combined? So with the solar system, you probably don't want articles from a really long time ago because things have changed. Also, for gaps in the area, it could be Planet X, like I mentioned earlier. And you could always combine ideas, like maybe comparing two different planets, NASA missions, or how different governments have space programs. So there's a lot of different things you could do with that topic, and that's something you'll be thinking about when you're engaging with your research. And of course, contributing, this is always the final stage, especially for your assignment when you turn in your paper. But just remember how you can add to the conversation. Think about the type of product you're putting out. It could be discussion board posts, could be a paper, a poster, anything that you're creating for your course. And make sure you're always referencing that material that you researched in your final work. So now that we've talked about the academic conversation, how you can enter into that, how you can conduct background research and really find ways to add to the conversation, we're going to talk about how you can contribute ethically. So there's a couple things we'll look at. First, plagiarism, and then we'll talk about two copyright concepts, intellectual property and fair use. So plagiarism is basically using anything that's created, it could be words, ideas, or work, and not giving proper credit to the person. So in academia, it's really, really important to cite your sources to give credit because it adds to the value of information and you're saying this is where you enter the academic conversation. So we're going to talk a little bit about plagiarism. There are really two main types. The first one is intentional. Intentional could be buying a paper from someone and turning it in, copying someone's work. So intentional is pretty easy to avoid. Unintentional is what we'll be looking at more in the video. Unintentional could be maybe you forget to do a works cited page, but you have quoted or cited the source in text in your in-text citation, or you just forget to cite something. So unintentional is something we'll be working on today, and that always can be fixed through citing sources. These are some examples of people who have plagiarized in their professions or just in the workplace outside of academia. So you can see a few examples here. Just remember that plagiarism is a real issue, not just in academia, but in the workplace. And keep in mind that there's always going to be consequences for those actions. So feel free to look at a couple of these examples yourself. Now moving on to a little bit about copyright. First, we're going to talk about intellectual property. So this is anything that's been created as a result of creativity. So it could be a work, it could be an invention, it could be music, it could be math, it could be anything that's created. And the property itself has rights, so it has inherent value, which means it has value given to it when it's created. And it could have a different type of value, like monetary value. You could make money off of something that you've created. And because of that, you're allowed to apply for some kind of protection for your intellectual property. So it could be a patent, it could be copyright or trademark. And there's some other ones that can also be used. So keep in mind, intellectual property is anything that's created. And this graphic illustrates that. Information creation requires the work of individuals, as you can see on the left, and they can make anything. So like I mentioned, it could be music, an equation, a formula that can be created. And then you can see, of course, it has value, in this case monetary value, but it does have value given to it when it's created. And talking about intellectual property is fair use. Fair use, you can see the definition on the screen. It allows for the use of some types of copyrighted material without permission. So you can only do this in a few cases, for example, news reporting, teaching, or research. There's certain things that are protected, and you still have to cite the source that you're using. In this case, you don't need to reach out to ask permission to use it. So again, these are just a couple ways that you can use information under fair use. But keep in mind, you always need to cite that information and give credit to the original creator. And this graphic again shows that something that's created before someone else could think of a new idea, they could add to that conversation, they can continue building upon that, and that new work has value. Remember, if you have any questions about copyright or how to cite, you can always talk to one of your librarians. And it's important to remember this because all of the created works are protected and have that inherent value. You need to remember how and why to use intellectual property, both inside academia and in, your real life and your jobs. And make sure, again, that you're always citing with credit given to the creator. Did you know that your syllabus discusses plagiarism and its consequences? Remember when you're turning in your work that your professor will probably use Turnitin, which is a database of compiled works that have been turned in the past. This allows your professor to see if any of this text has been copied from something else. So just remember, a lot of universities use these, and it's something that your professor may use too. Again, if you have any questions about how to cite, you're afraid maybe you would be in trouble, if you didn't cite correctly, please reach out to your professor or librarian for help. And again, the easiest way to avoid plagiarism is through citing. So this is the definition of citation. It could be a quotation from or reference to a book, paper, or author. So citations can also be used for films, music, anything else that's created. Usually they're used in academia with books or articles. There are three main times that you'll need to cite. The first one is quoting. This is an exact word or phrase copied directly from the text. It could be just a sentence, or it could be up to a paragraph, which is called a block quote. When you're quoting directly, you'll need to put that in quotations and have information at the end about the author and page number. It's important to include the author and page number because if I was reading a paper with a quote, I would want to go to the original source and see the context from where it was taken. The next time you'll need to cite is when you're paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is similar to quoting, except that when you're reading the text, you're taking it and then you're putting it in your own words. Usually it's a larger segment. It's not just a short phrase or sentence. It's a bigger chunk of the text itself. You'll still want to include attribution, which is going to be the author name and probably page numbers as well, just to let your reader know where you got the information. And finally, summarizing is the third time you'll need to cite. The summary is usually a really short description of a text or a source. This is similar to a literature review where there's just a little bit of information about each source that's looked at. And in this case, your attribution would probably just be the author name and not a page number because it's taking a look at the whole source. So remember, the 3 times you'll need to cite are quoting, paraphrasing, and summarizing. When not to cite. There are 2 different times you will not need to cite. The first one is your own original ideas. When you're coming up with new ideas, when you're adding to the conversation, you won't need to quote that or cite that because that's your own thoughts. However, if you turn in a paper from a different class, you'll need to let your professor know and ask permission, and you'll need to cite that in your new paper or work. And this goes as well with anything that's published. So you'll always need to cite that. However, if it is, again, your own original idea in your paper, then that's fine. You will not need to cite that. Common knowledge is another thing you won't need to cite. This is information and ideas that are well known to a general audience. So this will change over time depending on what people know. But a good example is the first president is George Washington. Pretty much everyone knows that. There's not like an original source for that, so you don't need to cite it. Again, if you have any questions about what counts as common knowledge, what doesn't count, please ask your librarian. Citations themselves have 3 main goals. First, we've talked about it helps you avoid committing plagiarism. I feel that the last 2 are more important. Shows that your assignment or project is based on research, so you've done that background research, you've explored what's out there already, and you're adding to the conversation. And then it lets your reader know where you're entering that conversation. So what have you looked at, what sources have you used, and what have you gleaned from them in your new conversation. You can see on the left, MLA, APA, and Chicago. These are the 3 main citation styles that you'll see here at Lone Star. And we again have a guide that goes over each of these citation styles. There are other ones out there like the AMA, American Medical Association. So depending on what kind of discipline you go into, there may be another one that you use. And feel free to ask your librarians for help with that as well. This is an example of a citation. I'm going to quickly talk about how this is put together. One thing to keep in mind is that you don't need to memorize exactly how to cite something unless you really want to. We have a bunch of guides. Purdue OWL is available as well, and it will tell you which order to put the components in. Now this is color-coded the same way as the guide. So if you look on the left, author is going to always be first, and then we'll have the title next. And then you'll see title of container 1. So this source is a journal article from a database. So there are 2 different containers. Here you can see Nursing Economics, and the second container is Academic Search Complete. The easiest way to think about this type of citation is to look right after location, the whole first chunk here at the top. This is referring to the print journal. So the article lives within Nursing Economics, which is the first container. You can see the information about the volume and number. That will tell you which volume to go to find the article. The date published will always come next, and that's really important, especially if you're doing a historical paper or a scientific paper. You might need older or more recent works, so your professor will probably be looking at those dates too to see if they fit within your area. And then the final location is the page number. And again, all of that we've talked about so far, author all the way to location. This is talking about the print journal. So you would go to that journal to find the article. Now this is an online article in a database. So the next container is the database itself. So the article itself lives within this journal, Nursing Economics, which lives within Academic Search Complete. So you'll make sure that you put in the database there, and then you're going to have a link. So the link itself could be the URL, which we have here, or something called a DOI. Now a DOI stands for Digital Object Identifier, and this is a direct permanent link to the article. This is becoming a lot more common because, as we know, URLs could disappear, they could be taken over by something else, and they're not going to be permanent. DOIs are permanent. You'll see them a lot with education journals, some scientific journals as well, and basically that means that the article will always be there at that URL address at the DOI. If you're not sure which one to use, it will tell you on the database page which one you can put in your citation. So we've talked a lot in this video. First, why are citations important? They're important because it lets your reader know where you're entering the academic conversation, it tells them what sources you're using for your argument and your new work, and it gives credit to the original authors. You'll need to cite in 3 different ways: quoting, paraphrasing, and summarizing. Basically, anytime you use a source that isn't your own original thought, you're going to need to cite that. Some resources you can use include the citation guide on the LSC-Montgomery website, Purdue OWL, your librarians, or your professors. If you have any questions or need any help, please feel free to contact the LSC-Montgomery Library through email, calling, texting, chatting, or you can schedule a research consultation to meet in person with or virtually with a librarian. Thank you for watching this video.